Now, okay, let's look at emotion, right? So we have a few theories, right? As far as I'm concerned, right, and as far as your final exam is concerned, right, do remember the three theories. Okay, first we talk about the James-Lange and Canon-Bard theories. Then we talk about the Schachter-Singer, the two-factor theory, right? And in all these three theories, all right, or maybe in just these two theories, okay, in these two theories, right, we talk about physiological arousal, right? Then we talk about subjective experience, or maybe just the perception of the person. And then the last part will be behavioral emotion expression, right? So the difference between these two theories is just the temporal ordering of events. So for James-Lange, right, our James is our William James, yeah, our this famous American psychologist, right, grandfather of American psychologists. So why did he actually came up with something that's so uncommonsensical, right? Like, it's like I feel afraid, right? It's not because I see the dog, right? It's not because I see the dog then I feel afraid, right? I am afraid because of me experiencing my pounding heart and me knowing that I am running, right? It's because of my behavior then I start to feel afraid, right? This is totally non-intuitive. But why did he actually think in this way, right? It's because of that time. Okay, this Karl Lange, right, in Germany, he's a physiologist, right? So his proposal, right, was that the origins, right, the origins of emotions lies in our this peripheral, okay, PNS, peripheral nervous system. So it's really something that is coupled. Our emotions are just physiologically coupled with the PNS. And in that way, and then because cognition is something, that have to do with perception, right? So first you got to make some interpretation of the sensation. So perception has to occur before you can really have cognition, right? And then so James' interpretation was he wants to tie emotion more with cognition, right? So he wants to put something that is more perceptual, okay, that is more physiological before, right, the cognition. Yeah. So this is why he came up, he and Lange, both of them came up with this totally uncommonsensical theory, right? Which later on was kind of debunked, right, by Canon-Bard, right? Because Canon-Bard, right, they devised a set of experiments, right, showing that our cognition, right, our realization of all these responses, right, like all these fear responses, happiness, usually it's fear, right, because fear is so much easier to study, right? Normally we just couldn't, distinguish it, right, from the co-occurrence of any kind of bodily responses, right? I mean, usually such things just happen, at the same time, right? Let's say, a wolf suddenly, or a fearsome wolf suddenly come barking and charging at you, right? Straight at once, you wouldn't even start to think, straight at once you will run, and then you will be gripped by fear, right? And then when you're running, there's no way you're going to think, okay, is it because I'm running, then I feel the fear, or is it because the fear caused me to run, right? Such thought will never enter, right? It's just you are just running, and then you're feeling fear, right? You're feeling all these heart rate flushes. So everything happens at once, right? And I also believe that it's also based on the experimental results, right? Showing, like what I just said, right? That participants, they just couldn't distinguish, right? Which one occurs before the other, right? So they just put everything, both processes, right? Both factors as co-occurring, right? So these things, our physiological arousal, subjective experience happens at roughly the same time, right? Yeah. So this is a more nuanced theory, a more commonsensical theory, right? And I would also say that it's a more correct theory, all right? Canon-Bard theory. Okay, and now the third, okay, so this is the two-factor theory, right? Before I talk about the other two, right? So I just want to highlight this cognitive appraisal, right? In our textbook, it's called cognitive interpretation, but doesn't matter. It is cognitive appraisal, and I want everybody to tie this thing, right? When was the last time we talked about cognitive appraisal? That is our Lazarus, right? Transactional model of health promotion, right? Remember that, right? So so Lazarus also talk about this emotional appraisal, right? This physiological arousal is also related to Lazarus model, right? Because it arose, right? It came right from a particular situation, right? Let's say this car, right? Some car is just driving very 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 quickly. It's about to hit the other car, right? Yeah. So there's definitely some physiological arousal, right? I mean, if you are the person driving the car, in front, I mean, the car behind you is going to kind of hit you, right? So that is a situation, right? That drove this physiological arousal, right? So that's where so this is actually the cognitive perspective. I would say that's where it actually came in, and then this psychodynamic this concept, right? This perspective. So and this is already the Freudian concept, but it's more like, I wouldn't say it's sexual, but it's more like the aggressive instincts, right? Of all these unconscious negative effects of emotion, right? So that goes like, you can see that curve, right? Yes, and then we also see the word like delusional, right? Certain people are just not they're just unaware, even though they have high blood pressure, they have palpitation, but then they also think that I'm fine, I'm perfectly good, right? I'm just perfectly mentally healthy. And then but the heart, when you listen to the heart, right, check the blood pressure, is totally the reverse, right? So what is happening is that they are practicing emotional suppression, right? So this is the value of the psychodynamic theory, right? So it actually highlights all these negative effects of suppressing and not really being, highly conscious, right, of our emotions, and and that really can just affect our, daily life, right? It may not necessarily affect our this cognitive performance, but physiologically speaking, it's very, very damaging, right? So I just want everybody to take note of that. Then the last one with Darwin's evolutionary perspective, how Darwin says it is that emotion is a tool, right? It's an adaptation tool, right? That really facilitates our survival and reproduction, right? So imagine, so it's like if an animal, right, is barking, right, roaring, right, a lion roars, right, or kind of baring its teeth, right? Yeah, this is like showing of anger, showing of dominance, right, showing of aggression. So all this kind of behavior will kind of drive all its competitors away, right? And then so that it can seize more land, right? It can get more food, and that will ultimately contribute to its survival, its reproduction, right? Yeah, so that's how Darwin says in a very, very simplistic fashion, right? I mean, that's tied to his maximization of inclusive fitness theory again, right? Yeah, so this is again, I mean, the survival of the fitness theory.